Hello, and welcome to Alive or Just Blethering, a podcast where two 30-somethings discuss the music we found and loved growing up. My name is Chris Lavender, and with me is my fellow host, Keith McLeod. Today I'd like to talk about Tear from the Red by Poison the Well.
Poison the Well or Boys in the Well? That's going to fuck me up for the rest of the night.
Poison the Well.
Definitely Boys in the Well, come on. That's just like a Mandela effect, right? They were always Boys in the Well.
I mean, it has a meaning. It's an argument fallacy, isn't it?
Boys in the Well or Poison the Well?
Poisoning the well is a phrase to allude to something that you will then discredit them with later on. It's logical fallacy nonsense. I don't understand it. I'm not that smart. Have a look at it online if you're that into it.
Not something I'm aware of.
We probably do it. I think it's something that you probably do when discussing things, but you don't even know it has a name.
Right, got you.
Sort of like when people use like straw man as if to discredit you, they use a straw man argument, sort of saying there's some other bad and whataboutism and stuff. It's just giving a name to something that we do. Anyway.
Welcome back to the pod, everyone. If you're new to the podcast, thanks for joining us on Alive or Just Blethering. If you're coming back, welcome back. We're here to talk about Tear from the Red. This is going to be Lav's baby.
Tear from the Red.
Yeah.
And
cool.
Yeah, so if you want to join in the conversation, do reach out to us on our socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, AOGB Podcast. You can also send us an email at aogb.podcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
What was that? Send an email at where? At?
I never said that.
You said at.
Don't.
Let's go back to the recording, everyone. I'm going to put it in right now.
aogb.podcast@gmail.com. aogb.podcast@gmail.com.
You said at aogbpodcast.com.
Okay, Keith. Thank you. Anyway.
Like we can't go back and do it now. We can't do this live, but I will go back in the edit and I will put that
in slow motion. At the OGB podcast.
And if I was wrong, maybe I'll put in a little bit of a solo thing to be like, "Hey guys, I was right," but you definitely said at the beginning of the email address.
I'll take your word for it, Keith. Anyway, so
hey listeners, just Keith coming in here solo while I'm doing the edit. You tell us, was that an at the beginning of the email address, or was it just a stutter? At AOGB Podcast on Instagram or Twitter if you want to get involved in the conversation. I'm going to die on this hill. I think that was definitely an at. But let's get back to the episode.
This is an album that I've gone back to like every month since I first heard it. I think that Botula to this day might be my most listened to track on Last FM.
Oh boy.
Of all time.
Oh boy.
Let's I'm just on Last FM now. Yeah, Botula, 122 scrubbles.
What the shit is a scrubble?
So before Last FM was called Last FM, it was called Audio Scrobbler.
Right, never knew that.
So it used to upload your tracks that you listen to on iTunes or Winamp, as it was at the time I used to use.
We loved Winamp.
And so yeah, number 1 is Botula, number 2 is Wake the Dead, and number 3 is To the Death by Architects. Really old Architects.
Oh, original Architects, everyone.
Yeah. And basically, I've just gone through this list now. My top 10 contains 3 Poison the Well songs.
So, a pretty big influence on you then?
Not half, by looks of things. I'm actually surprised that myself.
It's truth, mate.
Fuck Christ. Yeah, this one was one of those albums. I remember precisely the person who introduced me to it, Barry. He wanted to start a band. I was living in Edinburgh at the time. He was back home, and this was the song that he wanted to do. And I'd heard of Poison the Well. I knew of their existence. They had just come through, played Edinburgh basically a month earlier by supporting Dillinger Escape Plan at the Liquid Rooms.
Ooh, savage.
And So I knew they existed, but I didn't go to that gig, but I was aware that gig happened and who the support act was. Then Barry says, like, I want to do this Poison the Well song, and basically Botula was the first Poison the Well song that I ever heard. And then I heard the rest of the album, and I was in love. I was hooked.
In love. Okay, I mean, I don't have the same feelings towards this. Botula is a good song. I've always known of Boys in the Well because a friend of ours who was the guitarist in one of my first bands, or I was the bassist in one of his first bands. He loved Boys in the Well. Like, it was Ross and Boys in the Well went like hand in hand. A little bit like sort of what we were talking about, like Funeral for a Friend and sort of other bands. Like, you know, you're just synonymous with this band. And I don't know what it was. I never kind of got into them. So I've always been aware of the band from that point. You know, you're talking like 2004, 2005 here. I was made aware of this band. I never went out my way to listen to these guys. And that's not anything against what I heard about them, or that's not against anything. I just don't know. I just never crossed the threshold of, do you know what, I'll check. My friend likes these guys, I'll go check them out. I never did that. And so I've gone through my entire life really knowing of them, but never actually knowing Boys in the Well.
By the time I'd heard them, so this we're talking 2000, really early 2005 now, Tear from the Red was basically 3 years old at this point.
Yeah.
And they already had the follow-up, You Came Before You, and obviously their debut, The Opposite of December, A Season of Separation. Those 3 albums, I just ate them up. Absolutely consumed them. And there was a Scottish hardcore band called Azrael, who were basically a Poison the Well-esque band. They used to play a Poison the Well cover. They used to do Nerdy live.
Right.
And oh my God, the place would just erupt. Remember this video on MySpace of them doing it? I think they were playing it in Manchester, and the place just going absolutely tits.
That's funny.
Yeah, they were great. And this album, I always just gravitated to Tear from the Red, and it might be because it was the first one I heard. I will hands down say that You Came Before You is probably sonically and better written, better produced, better styles, the lot. It's probably objectively the better album.
That's the one I recognise. If we're talking album covers, that's what I recognise for Poison the Well. I'm not familiar with any of the other album covers. That You Came Before You is the one I would say that's the Poison the Well album. Couldn't have told you they did 4-5 albums.
Yeah, their next one that came after You Came Before You, Versions. That one was a strange one when it first came out, because it's very much like, it's more like Norma Jean-esque. A bit more...
Which Norma Jean, though? Are we talking early Norma Jean or later Norma Jean?
Early Norma Jean. It has a lot of vibes of, oh God, The Aftermath. And I dug it. I thought it was good. It was a bit different. It wasn't quite as hardcore, and maybe wasn't what I wanted at that moment. And they'd had a lineup change, and from what I understand in the recording of Versions, it was recorded over like 4 sessions in Sweden. So there's a lot of, attention was paid into the production of it. But again, it's one of those albums that has just grown on me, and it is the definition in my book of a grower.
Tear from the Red.
No, sorry, I'm talking about Versions now. So Poison the Well, I'll say it. I'll put all my cards on the table here. There's bands out there. Every Time I Die, Comeback Kid. They have not made a bad album. However, each album, and this is no discredit to them, but each album sort of sounds the same as the last.
Okay.
In parts, in spaces. Very, very much with Poison the Well, every album is unique. You play me a Poison the Well song, and I can pinpoint which album it's off just by hearing that song. I can't say the same for Every Time I Die. Sometimes I'm like, oh, is that one off? There's a couple of moments where I think their albums are a little bit similar.
Yeah, but you're not at the same time. You're not confusing Hot Damn and Radical.
Correct. Yes, there you've got a big space between albums.
Yeah, within
production
sort of one step, you're maybe the lines are a bit blurred, but obviously the band progressed through their sound. But you're saying Tear from the Red, you could pinpoint which song came from which album, no matter.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, there's only 5 albums, so it's not really hard.
Not loads.
But at the same time, each album is a standalone, and it sounds like it was written for that album. It doesn't feel like there was ever any B-sides that were then saved for another album, if that makes sense.
So you were saying you got introduced to this album, or you got introduced to the band by a friend. Was the idea to, like, were you looking to start a band based on this sound, or were you just we're going to get together, jam, do a couple of covers with this stuff, and see where it goes, or how did that go for?
I think option 2. It was, let's just rehearse a couple of songs, get into a space, and see how it goes. The trouble was I was living 100 miles away.
Yeah.
And the other 4 boys were in each other's bedrooms basically. So it wasn't. It never panned out, but it got me into it. They knew I was in.
Sorry, were they back in?
Yeah, back in the Northeast.
Or were they in it? So I misconfused that, and I completely thought about a completely different baddie.
Oh no, I know what you mean. No, this was my so this was my friends back in the Northeast.
In the Northeast.
We had our spaces. We sort of stayed in touch. I'd only been away from the place maybe 3 months at this stage.
Yeah, so you're still very much rooted there. Your friends are still there. You're still very much that's your go-to for doing things as you're learning your place in Edinburgh.
I didn't count myself as moving away until I was paying bills. And my first year away from Edinburgh, my first year in Edinburgh, I was in like halls of residence. So I didn't.
Yeah, and
it didn't count.
Yeah, that's not a home. That's those substandard living conditions. Like that's not a home. Like you're away from home at that place, and you would go home during the summer or during the holidays or whatever.
That's right. So I was home almost every other weekend. Christmas, I was home for 2 weeks. Easter, I was home for 2 weeks. Summer, was when I first got a flat, and that's when your first bill comes through and it's got your name on the top of it, and that's when you're like, shit got real.
Yeah.
If I don't pay this, I don't have internet anymore, or the gas might go off. What do I do then?
I live here now. Crap! I live here.
So this was one that this is a band. This is an album that I go back to quite regularly. So it was this week has just been another normal week to me of listening pleasure.
Great.
Okay, maybe I've been like, you know what, I'm going to listen to the discography. Let's give that a whirl.
That's kind of what I meant to do. To be fair, I kind of meant to go and listen to You Come Before You because I just knew the image of it so well. I didn't have time to do that, so I've not explored this really more than just Tear from the Red. I want to say I did listen to You Come Before You. I think, did we not talk about doing Poison the Well like a lot sooner? And I think at that time I might have listened to You Come Before You. I want to say I've listened to that album in the last year or two.
I can't remember. This was in our quest to be chronological. I think this is us going back a couple of years.
By release, but I think from what you were saying, your listening preferences.
Oh, I can absolutely pinpoint this is like early 2005. Really early 2005. I'd literally only heard of the band existing in December of 2004.
Yep.
And I will say it now, I did not go to that gig, and it is one of those like top 5 regrets of...
Yeah, I wish you'd been there.
Oh yeah. Because at the time, the Dillinger Escape Plan that I knew are not the Dillinger Escape Plan that they became.
Yeah, I heard a lot about Dillinger shows, and I'll be honest, I was somewhat intimidated to put myself in a Dillinger Escape Plan show. Couple of reasons. One, I was never overtly familiar with the music. I didn't know every single meaning or hook or lyrical thing. You know, there was quite a lot of jokes kicking around the Edinburgh scene for 43% Burnt and stuff like that, and I just wasn't on that EP. Like, I didn't know those references and stuff like that. So then you hear the shows are absolutely fucking wild, and like guys are just going mental at each other. Oh yeah, you know, 19, 20-year-old Keith was a bit like, maybe I'm a bit of a pussy and I don't want to do this. Maybe I don't want to die at a show.
I didn't really. I'd heard Dillinger. I knew who Dillinger were. I'd listened to those, those famous, what now are now famous songs from Calculating Infinity. You know, your 43% Burn and such. And I didn't really get into them until they're like. I always think of Ironworks as the moment that I really twigged and got it, as it were, with Dillinger. They became more. I felt they became a lot more progressive and really good. And then I've gone back, and Miss Machine is a fucking banger. And I'd like to talk about Dillinger one day. But again, there's a band that I would probably be talking about as a general band rather than like a specific album with them.
Yeah, I didn't so much go into Calculating Infinity. Like I say, 43% Burnt and stuff like that was not something I particularly knew. I did really sort of quite like Miss Machine. I'm not going to say at the time I loved it. It was on the cusp for me of like, I know this is good, but I don't quite want to listen to all of it yet. Like it's I appreciate it, and it was obviously very popular at the time. But I then sort of came back, and it's interesting when you say Ire. Like, Ironworks was a very different album, and I would probably recognise there was a change in Ironworks and where they went after that. I don't think I've listened to... No, I did Farewell Mona Lisa. Yeah, Operation I gave all the albums a listen to until their end. But yeah, I'm sure we will talk about Dillinger soon.
One day. So, Tear from the Red, absolutely dripping with nostalgia. This is the first time you've heard of it. What's your takeaway from Tear from the Red then?
The one thing for me was it was very familiar. It's, having not knowing it, it almost felt like an old friend. It almost felt like a little comfort blanket of like, this was 2003, 2004 in an absolute nutshell. We've talked about it before, where 2004 was... I left high school, I was 18, I joined a band, I started going out and experiencing new things and stuff like that. Like, this easily was one step away from being the soundtrack to my 2004. In saying that, holy shit, this album is from 2003, and it's from 2003.
It sounds like it, doesn't it?
It does. It doesn't only just sound like it, but like everything about it. I'm not saying it hasn't aged well. It kind of hasn't aged well, but everything about it is, from the chords to the songs, to the beatdowns, to the screams, it is very much of its time, and I am of that time, and I have an appreciation for that stuff. But oh boy, a couple of times into this, I just really wanted to like cut the guitars out of the mix.
Yeah,
they're so... It's as if the distortion is... And this is a symptom of the time. I say symptom. This is a product of the time where, like, it was as if distortion was just, let's sample a white noise. Let's sample static off the TV and just try and, like, tweak that a little bit. Like, what I sort of found in the music is there's not a lot of... How many guitars are on this album?
Two.
Right. What, almost similar to Chimera, why is there two guitars on this album? I don't think they differentiate a lot. I don't think there's... Give me a riff from this album. There's not really any stand... See, the clogs are turning.
There's a lot.
I don't...
I don't know. I think there's a lot of... Yeah, I get where you're coming from. Okay, there's not any sort of. It's not metalcore.
Distinctive.
It keeps getting. I
Yeah.
don't think it's metalcore, and people are going to disagree with that.
I don't. This album's not metalcore. This is borderline. This is screamo.
Yeah, to me this is a blueprint for what would then later come out as, you know, very emotional hardcore. It is on a line between hardcore and that sort of heavy screamo emo that we may have listened
Yeah.
to as well.
It's heavier than your emos. Like it's heavier than your Funeral for a Friend or your My Chemical Romance, etc. Like it is absolutely more metal than or metalcore than what those bands were, but at the same time, it's the sort of the swing from the screams to the cleans, the acoustic song that's on this album, etc. Like it's also very much rooted in emo while being quite heavy. So that, to me, that's just what makes it screamo.
Yeah, I'll give it that. Yeah. Yeah, it does show its age. There's no denying that. It's a product of its time, and it's rooted in that 2003 2002 sound. If you'd gone from Opposite of December, which sounds in comparison to Opposite of December, Tear from the Red sounds absolutely pristine. Like,
Right.
it really is a step up. And I think this is why I really dig it, because each album is such a step up. Like you say, going from Hot Damn to Radical with Every Time I Die, you know, you can see total night and day. That compress that into the next album, and then the next album after
intense.
that. It's intense. And this is where if we met someone today who listens to all the same music that we listen to, and then I'm like, oh, and what do you think of Poison the Well? And they stare at me and go, who? I'd go, right. I'd give them You Came Before You as a starter.
Yeah.
I'd give them that one. I'd say, start there. If you like what you hear,
Go backwards.
go backwards. If you don't, go forwards
Right.
until you find something that you do like. Because there's just so much, and they're so varied. The closest I think there's a band, I didn't really listen to too much of them. They were called Hopes Fall.
Sounds familiar.
So they had an album called The Satellite Years, and then they had one in the middle called A-Types, which is more alternative. And then they've got, like, my favourite of theirs is Magnetic North. But they were the closest that I could say at the time that I listened to, of like taking that sound as well and having a similar sort of really heavy screamo, I suppose, is the best description I can give.
I do quite like Hopes Fall, actually, but they're a Spotify band for me. They're someone who I didn't really know beforehand. I just sort of found a couple songs through Spotify Radio, and when I looked into them to find out they'd actually been around for so long, I was like, oh, holy shit, I had no idea these guys were a thing. I don't remember them coming up in conversations or people recommending them, etc. So I'm aware of the band. I've liked a few songs on the old Spotify before. I don't know, maybe I've just not listened to their earlier stuff to compare them to this. They're definitely their later stuff for this, I wouldn't say was similar, but yeah, I'm saying they're very much of the time. I probably couldn't tell you right now a band that sounded like Poison the Well, because every band sounded like Poison the Well at this time.
Mm-hmm.
But the sort of thing I was saying about, like, give me a riff from this album. So there are some really standout moments vocally. There's some really standout moments melodically. There's some really standout moments, with beatdowns and kicks and stuff. But it's I think, especially if I'm considering where I was at this time, I'm listening to your Triviums and your Bullet for My Valentines and like those sort of heavier metalcore bands.
Mm-hmm.
Killswitch Engage were absolutely getting played every day for me round about this time as well. Like, just these gritty, staticky sort of just chords just getting constantly pushed through these songs. It's probably why I never really got into them, because it's a sound to this day I still don't particularly enjoy.
Fair enough. that sort of makes sense if that's not what you were looking for. I would really recommend you do listen to Versions and the Tropic Rot if that's what you like, because the guitar work really does develop in their later albums. Like, say, you ask for a riff and there's one that comes into my head and I'm like, that's a different album. And then I'm like, oh, but then there's that one, that's a different album. It's not on this one. I can only give you that sort of, it is strumming, it's rhythmic, it's intense.
Yeah.
It's not tight, if that's the word. If that's what you were looking for. If you're looking for those tight alternate picking and stuff, that's not in this.
No, it's very much not, is it? It's not there at all. It's not, I wouldn't say it's necessarily what I'm looking for. Maybe it is, otherwise I'm completely contradicting myself. But it's maybe something I've found lacking in the album. Again, if I have to state it outright, I did enjoy this album. I thought it was pretty good. There was a lot of moments I did like from it, but just what I think I struggled with was the sort of age of it, like and how it is very much a product of its time.
Yeah, I get you. And it gave me a sort of insight into what became a lot of bands that I've spoken about it previously, about going to a band's label and having a look through the roster to see what you find. And I think we've spoken about Trustkill on a couple of occasions.
We have now, yeah.
So bands that were on Trustkill back in those days, you had Bleeding Through, 18 Visions.
Weren't Trustkill, didn't they, I'm looking at, because Trustkill have the controversies tab, so weren't Trustkill part of didn't that screw over quite a few people?
Yeah, so Chris Hornbrook, the drummer from Poison the Well, he spoke ill of Josh Grabel in a podcast in 2013, saying they went through some dumb shit with that guy and that he owed the band money. So, reading between the lines, from what I understand, their relationship with Trustkill, I don't know about the money side of things, but they left Trustkill to get signed to Atlantic for You Came Before You. And as I understand it, Trustkill didn't really want to let go of the band.
Yeah, that's what I've read also.
And I'm wondering if there was some sort of like, well, if you guys go to Atlantic, we owe you X amount of money. I don't know. He's clearly... Yeah, there's clearly been something. From what I understand with Trustkill, it was purely he just misjudged it. And I think the 2008, 2007 sort of credit crunch and the recession absolutely just fucked his cash flow. And then anything that came after that was just a struggle. So the fact that Poison the Well had left Trustkill in 2002 or 2003, for them to be saying he owes us money means
in 2013, yeah.
It means there must have been something way before their cash flow problems that then eventually led to the demise of the label.
I think from what I've read, Tear from the Red blew up for Boys in the Well. I think it gave them a lot of exposure.
Yeah.
It got them sort of on the front of a lot of sort of labels, and ultimately they ended up going with Velvet Hammer Music, Velvet Hammer Music and Management Group, who were operating as an independent print for Atlantic Records. So, from what I've read, their contract with Trustkill was coming to an end, and he probably wanted to keep them because these guys were about to go big, but instead they've opted to go for another label. So maybe that's the you've got a band who are probably about to go, for lack of a better word, viral. They're about to blow up. They're about to get really popular. Their contract's coming to an end. You want to keep these guys for the benefit of your label, but ultimately they've not renewed their contract and they've gone somewhere else. Maybe they do have a controversies page, and yeah, that's always a great sign for a label, isn't it? Very much so.
But there's a band that was on Trustkill, Terror. To this day, I have seen Terror live a couple of times. they're still tearing at the bits. They are fantastic.
Nice.
And there's the journey, is that I would be listening to this sort of emotionally charged hardcore back in 2005, and then when sort of versions came out, by then my tastes had moved into what became incredibly melodic hardcore stuff. Have Heart is a band that stands out to me as a one that comes to the tip of my tongue, and one we will talk about in a few months or so, at the rate we're going through these albums, because again, it's just having that just energy and emotion all inside this really bursting energy of guitars and everything. Yeah, there's not going to be riffs in there, sorry. There's not a lot of riffage, as we discussed.
That's a very good point, actually. Thanks for bringing that up. Very low riffage on Tear from the Red. Very low riffage. I'm getting a little bit backed up here, actually, with a lack of riffage. So, poor riffage from the Boys in the Well boys.
Yeah. It's not like Darkest Hour. Yeah, they brought the riffage, but this is not riffage.
So much riffage. No, it's sort of funny. Like, it's almost strange that I did not get into this band more, but they've just eluded me so much, because I don't recognise any of the band members. I don't know. It's kind of weird these days, sort of maybe with Instagram and what have you. Like, you sort of see, I don't know, you follow the band, you see the band, and you actually know the people in the band. Obviously, this is 2003. MySpace was king, but it's just weird. I've never seen the music videos, or I've never seen the music videos. I've never seen them online. I've just never seen any much of a presence from this band. I get that they broke up a while ago.
You have seen the Botchler music video. It is, again, quintessential hardcore band video. You might not have actually seen the actual video, but you have seen this. Right, okay. You have seen this style of video a million times.
My point is, I'm actually referring to the personnel of the band. Like, there's no familiarity there. There's no recognition of to who these guys were. And that still just sort of blows my mind a little bit, because I'm just kind of like,
I had a picture of Ryan Premark on my MySpace page.
Yeah, and I could not tell you. You showed me a picture of Poison the Well. I could not tell you who Ryan was.
What is amazing is that I think they're just one of those bands that inspired a lot of other bands through the songs, the songwriting techniques, through the sound that they were making, and the videos that they made, and I'm joking when I'm talking about Botchler, is that they just make that so many other people took bits of it and made their own music from it.
Yeah.
And made their own thing out of it. And I just feel like this is the band that inspired millions. What's that you've just seen?
So I just looked at the Botchler music video, and it's almost like a motion graphic with all the lyrics floating on it. And before we started, I was like, I wanted to double check a lyric, because I'm like, that I know I've got this wrong, and it's one for misheard lyrics. But I didn't think it was Botchler. I thought it was later on, but I thought the line was "shave my body," but it's shape
my body as I feel torn, broken. Yeah.
I just thought the guy was singing "shave my body," like as if it's maybe preparing for a sacrifice or something. I don't know where I got it from, but I could have sworn that line was "shave my body."
I quite like the lyrics on this album. It just appeals, 18-year-old, 19-year-old me. Just all that angst, all that, girls. Just not. This was just so like on the nose, but for the age that I was, this just tick. It's not even tick the box. It was like all the right buttons getting pressed, and I think that's another thing that sort of drew me into it.
I didn't really get any red flags, admittedly. There was maybe one or two things I wanted to double check, but nothing as bad as hit the floor from last week. What about the vocalist, Jeffrey
Moira?
Jeffrey Moira. How I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but what's your impression of the vocals? And obviously, you're aware of where the sound went, but off of this album, Tear from the Red, where do the vocals stand for you?
I really like them, but I think they can be a little bit. I don't know how to word this. A little bit rari, a little. They're throaty. They've got some balls to them, which is one way of putting it. And the fact that he can switch from that and do the not quite clean singing, but it is clean singing.
Mm-hmm.
I like that it's not like proper high pitched, you know, the type we were talking about crabcore on Still Remains, you know, where they're really clean, super, every word is completely, and then you've even got a little bit of auto tune in there in later bands in the early 2010s.
We're definitely going to talk about that when we hit Dance Gavin Dance and Johnny Craig.
Yeah, yes we are.
Like that, the hyper clean, like it was like a new breed of vocalist where like, oh, these guys can sing. Like, it's not just a guy who can scream trying to do cleans. It's someone who can sing clean and scream. Mm-hmm. I think that was the difference there.
I think Jeffrey strikes a fantastic balance of really aggressive, harsh vocals.
Mm-hmm. And
when the cleans come in, I've watched a couple of live videos. They did a live DVD which was called Tour from the Red, I think. Or Tear from the Road. I can't remember which way around it is.
Nice though, nice.
And the whoever recorded those, they are some of the best sounding live recordings I've ever heard. Like they were clearly plugged into the mixing desk for these recordings, and it's so well balanced. But Jeffrey can pull it off in those. And sad to admit, I've never seen Poison the Well live. As I understand it, they were an incredibly hard working band, and they did come to Glasgow, Edinburgh, even the UK and Europe on several occasions. But these guys were just never off the road in America by the sounds of things. Like, they're just non-stop. Totally relentless.
It does look like they worked with a hell of a lot of bands in tours and to promote this album. It's pretty impressive stuff.
I love their Instagram account is because obviously they are sort of they have reunited for shows only. They're not writing new material. They're not releasing new albums. They've re-released albums on vinyl, and Jesus Christ, they go quick. They are hot property. They were releasing vinyl records in the early 2000s, which was unheard of.
Yeah, no one was doing that.
I mean, not in the same way that it is today, where it's like the done thing. But back in the early 2000s, the hardcore scene still listened to a lot of vinyl, so they did limited runs on their vinyl records. And Poison the Well still, every once in a while, will throw a repress out there, super, super limited, and poof, it's gone. I think there's an Instagram post that was 22 minutes old, and it was a repress of Tear from the Red, and I was like, oh, I'm in there, swimwear, let me get this. Sold out.
Gone.
I think there was only 500.
Just to even look at the bands that they toured with, so according to the old Wikipedia I was going to completely rip off another podcast joke there, but I'm not going to do that. So according to Wikipedia, you know, they between November 2001 and October 2002, bearing in mind this was released February 19th, 2002, they toured with Unearth, Hatebreed, God Forbid, Shadows Fall, Converge, Hemlock, 18 Visions, Code 7, From Autumn to Ashes. I'm skipping some of these here. Glassjaw, Vex Red, Rise Against, Kitty, fucking yes, Killswitch Engage, Thursday. The fuck?
Yeah, they were bread and butter of the hardcore scene in the early 2000s. They were in there, all involved. You know, some of those bands that you've mentioned there, From Autumn to Ashes, fucking phenomenal band, incredibly emotional band. There's the line there with From Autumn to Ashes. They they had that really high pitched screaming in there. Really different.
I have confused From Autumn to Ashes with From August Burns Red. August Burns Red?
Oh, that's a different band altogether.
I know. Just when you said they're really emotional, I was like, no, they're not. They did that Britney. Oh, it's a different band.
Aye. They got on a lot of tours, and it shows. I think they tried to release a split with 18 Visions that never saw the light of day.
That'd have been cool.
And 18 Visions is probably a band there. I was saying like a bands that sort of influenced them. I would say that Poison the Well, what they were doing in 2002 is what 18 Visions saw in 2004 with Obsession, and we're like, there, that's the. I think there's a really close link to that.
Oh, I don't.
In parts.
Think...
In parts.
Care to define any of those parts?
When you've got the the aggressive singing in Obsession, I think it's got a really similar vibe to what Poison the Well were doing. They would do a whole track of it, but I'm just talking inspiration. I'm not saying they ripped a riff off, or they ripped a sound, or they ripped a tone or anything like that. It's just
okay.
There's some kind of sprinkling. I'm talking like glitter or a sparkle. Just the
Okay. I don't want you to die on this hill.
A fine scent of vanilla through it. I don't know.
If you think so, fair enough. I would perhaps disagree with that, but that very very much possible. They were label mates on Trustkill as well, by the looks of things. So that's I suppose that would have been cool. I suppose just to come back to the vocals, and to come back to Jeffrey, I don't want to shit on them. I don't want to shit on them. I'm not, but I did find them sort of strained at points. I thought there was a little bit like vocal parkour sometimes, where the guy's got, you know, some of the screams that he's putting out on some of these tracks, and then I don't know. I don't understand why the acoustic song is on this album. Is it Moments Over Exaggerate?
Horns
and Tails.
Yeah.
Track 6, Horns and Tails. I mean, you've got the start of Botula. It's acoustic. It's obviously nice and chill and stuff like that. Horns and Tails doesn't. This is from a different album, or this was just something. It feels like it was just something they sort of put on to make it up, because I don't think anything else really suggests a similarity to that song. Does that make sense? It's just so stand out there, so standalone, that I'm like, why is this here?
Okay.
It's by no means a bad song. I just don't know why it's on this album. So to come back to the vocals, I just do. I think the cleans work in Horns and Tails, but there's other parts of these songs where the cleans don't work, and they feel quite strained and forced in. Yeah, maybe that's what I'm trying to say. They feel quite, like square peg round hole, but just cram that fucker in there. Not even necessarily aggressively, just doesn't. I'm a bit like, oh, did you need to do that at that point?
I did pick up from the wiki page. They originally were going to put a cover on Tear from the Red, and it was going to be a cover of Smashing Pumpkins' Today.
What's it?
Today is the greatest day. I don't know.
Not the song. It's not vocalist, are you?
No, I have mixed emotions on Smashing Pumpkins, but anyway.
I don't like Smashing Pumpkins. I don't mind saying that. I don't like Smashing Pumpkins at all. Billy Corgan's a fucking weirdo.
Yes, he is. There we go. That is. They will agree on that. I don't mind one of their albums. I will put it on every once in a while, but outside of that, anyway, they were going to put Today on, and they had it recorded, and it's to this day, as far as I'm aware, it's unreleased. And they were gonna, so they were gonna put a cover on, but then they were like, "Nah, we've got 12, like, songs." I mean, you could say 12. They've got Carsey Street on there, which is a sort of in joke for the band. They they made that sort of they ended up making an album which was all original material, other than Marlon Brando giving us Horrors That You've Seen speech in Carsey Street.
It's another thing I feel is wedged in there. It's another thing I sort of feel is like, what is that? What theme is that running on? How is that referenced elsewhere? Or what it's as if they just heard like this really cool speech and wanted to put it in, so they did it. It doesn't seem to have a lot of context to me.
Yeah, they from what I read, Carsey Street was the street that they were staying at with a friend, and they used to watch Apocalypse Now. That was it.
Right.
And they like it. Apparently, I've not. My knowledge on Apocalypse Now is pretty loose.
I've seen it. I'm not an absolute Apocalypse Now head. I don't know where all the references come from. I know they killed that cow. There's a scene where they sacrifice a cow. That happened.
The problem with Vietnam movies, we're going to get into movies now. Sorry guys, if you were here to listen about Poison the Well, we're going to talk about movies now. The problem with Vietnam movies is Tropic Thunder. Tropic Thunder has ruined every Vietnam movie.
This came well out of left field.
Fucking right it has. But it's got an Apocalypse Now. We're talking about the tracks on.
Yeah, but Tropic Thunder. Okay, please. How's Tropic Thunder ruined Vietnam movies?
It made a joke of them. It made an absolute joke of them. So
okay,
all the scenes that are in Apocalypse Now have been satirized. So I now can't watch these incredibly serious but the scene. So that speech, the Horrors That You've Seen speech.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they burst into to get Ben Stiller's character, and he's.
But FYI, I've not seen Tropic Thunder in probably when it first came out. Like I went to the cinema to see it,
and he's like lost. He's lost his mind, and he's absolutely off it, and he's just like, because he's just totally in this character, and they have to snap him out of it. That's the getting Colonel Kurtz back. That's what they're doing, isn't it? But then, have you seen another one that ruins this? Have you ever seen Hot Shots Part 2?
Of course, I've seen Hot Shots Part 2 with Charlie Sheen and Martin Sheen.
Yeah, there we go. Same idea. They're just ripping on it, and it absolutely ruins these super serious movies. Anyway, we need to keep talking about Poison the Well. We've had feedback that we need to stay on track.
Right. Okay. Cool. No, we have Carsey Street as well. So irrespective of the sample of the Martin what's his name? Marlon Brando. Of the Marlon Brando sample.
Martin Brando, Marlon's brother.
Martin Sheen. I just said Martin Sheen. Again, musically, there's nothing else on the album like that rim chin chin rim chin chin. Like
you wanted a riff. You asked for a riff earlier. There was one.
It's not the riff I was thinking of, but that is a riff. You're right. It's super slow. It's super heavy. It's sludgy. It's fucking filthy. That rim chim chim. They don't. That's not this album. Again, like nothing else on that album. They never go into like a halftime sort of, or maybe they do. I haven't learned the album by heart, but like there's no points of like really super heavy, sludgy, like halftime breakdowns and stuff like that. Like where you're just like absolutely destroying a china. Do you know what I mean? It comes back to Horns and Tails, where there's just the odd moment on this album that sort of stands out as not really fitting in.
Yeah, I guess there's not anything that slow. They do have those breakdowns, those that discordant moments, which again, I feel that they nail in the next album. And I suppose the sort of the long and short of it is, I love Tear from the Red. I think it's absolutely one of my biggest influences when it comes to listening to music. But I do admit that their following albums are better in all objective senses, not just subjectively.
Just when you said discordant there, it reminded me of a moment on the album. So track 7, Sticks and Stones Never Made Sense. The end of that song is a sort of beatdown, is a breakdown with what is your sort of traditional, your sort of like mute into a discord, right? Dun, 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 right? But it's not discordant enough for me. It's not like a absolutely filthy ringing out like discord.
Okay.
It almost sounds as if like they're just kind of like they're doing like the chim cha, but it's not actually discordant. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Like, and that pissed me off because I was like, I want that to be heavier. I want that to be filthier, especially around about this time where. If I think back to 2004, I'm in my emo band, and like that's where I learned what a Discord was. Like those guys were like, "Oh yeah, you do this," and we were like trying to get Discords in everywhere because everyone was trying to get Discords in everywhere. Like I wanted that bit to be heavier, and I was a bit pissed off that I didn't get it. There you go. There's a moment I can definitely reference. Sticks and Stones never made sense. Get that fucking beat down heavier because you could.
I think my favourite track though is possibly the last track, Parks and Recreation, Parks and What You Meant to Me.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it does that thing that we talked about at the end of Darkest Hour, which it bleeds into the first track. Mm-hmm. It ends on the first opening note of Botula. That ends on that ding, and I'm like, oh, do it again. I love it. You just want to listen to the whole album one more time. It just reminds you of like where you came from, and you go, "Yep, play it again, Sam." You know, just give me all that one more time, and it is good stuff. I just love that when bands do that. If you want to, but you know, FYI, any band, if you want me to buy your album, play the first chord at the end again. Oh, you've got me.
Yeah, that full circle I think we talked about before in a few albums. I think for me, I want to. A lot of the album was a bit similar to me, but I think, again, a lot of moments stand out as being pretty good. There's so many good moments on this album, but if I had to maybe pick a song, I think Rings from Corona. I think that was just a bit more track 4. I think that was just a bit more balls out, a bit more riffy. That had more riffage, and I think was a bit more of a consistent number for me.
Yeah, to me, this is one of those albums I will not skip a single song on. That's pure nostalgia, and all the I will forgive its flaws.
Yeah, full disclosure, I wouldn't skip a song on this either, and I didn't skip a song on this. Maybe in hindsight, I would probably go over Horns and Tails every now and again. Like I would be like, oh, I'm not really. I want to get back to some riffage. I want to get back to some more beatdowns rather than this moment in time. But another thing interesting about this album, it was relatively easy to listen to, given that it's 30 minutes and 19 seconds.
Like 30-minute albums absolutely suit my life to the ground.
Should not be underestimated.
I don't know. I things in life, if you are getting somewhere, 30 minutes. My walk to work, 30 minutes. A bus into town, 30 minutes. Absolutely just fits. You've got how long? How long's lunchtime? 30 minutes. Ping in the headphones. Maybe those are the ones when you know what, I've got to skip. I've got to get a minute each side. I'll skip one track. Mm-hmm. But then that's it, just to get to the end. I absolutely love a 30-minute album, and there are going to be a lot more that we're going to talk about over the next few weeks, I think.
Can't wait. Okay, we're coming up on an hour for Tear from the Red. Any final thoughts on this album?
I absolutely have so much nostalgia for this album, so I can't speak ill of it. Mm-hmm. I'm not surprised that someone who maybe wasn't as into it finds it quite more of a challenging listen. But I would highly recommend, if anyone doesn't quite get into Tear from the Red, is to go to the next album, which was a lot more refined. And each album just became better and better. And to this day, though, it's like this is the B+ album, if you were doing those tier ranking things.
Right.
And it only gets better. Every album was good, but the next one was better. There's my final words on it.
I'm glad we talked about this album then, if the next one after this is better.
Had to talk about the ones that meant something to me at the time.
No, of course. Yeah, sure. Poise in the Well, Boys in the Well, Tear from the Red. Tear from the Red? I don't know. I'd like these guys to pick a lane. Look, I enjoyed this. I'll say it again. I did enjoy this album. There was a lot of nostalgia here for me as well. A lot of early sounds that sort of, you know, when you're sort of branching out and finding your own music and stuff like that, or this was very much a sound I recognised from the early years, 2003 to 2004 or 5. I don't think I'm going to slip this into my rotation. It's not a new Jimmy Eat World here. It's not a new Bleed American, but it was enjoyable. It was fun. Overall, anything negative I may have said is inconsequential, because generally a fun album and like you say, total nostalgia trip. So it was cool. And maybe I'm a little bit sad. I maybe missed the boat on Boys in the Well, but I don't know. I still had a pretty good time regardless. So rock and roll, baby.
Nice. So now we're going to go on to our one and only segment. What are you listening to?
What are you listening to?
So this week I've not managed to listen to a lot. Once again, I was on the road this weekend. I was back in Scotland for another wedding. Congratulations, Ricky and Kirsty. Beautiful, beautiful day. Thanks for having us. But it sort of, you know, I did more time with podcasts this time on the drive than I did with music. Tear from the Red is not something my wife would enjoy, although she did get, you know, a good listen to it today. Yeah, I've really been getting into this Mid-Flight Brawl podcast. The two Aussie comedians just going through fights on airplanes and disruptions in airports and stuff like that. It's just fucking hilarious. They're a bit... The comedy itself, you might think, you know, they did an episode today where they were perhaps mocking of an obese person, but when you find out what the guy did on the plane, he was a bit of a fucking piece of shit anyway. So, you know, you may think, oh no, these guys are assholes, but no, I think it's all in good jest. So I've been listening to that quite a bit. I find that quite funny. But one day this week, I was in the gym. I was bored. I was like, I've not got any music to listen to. I've gone through the 30 minutes of Tear from the Red. I need something else to get me through. And I listened to Scion by Scion. So that is... I mentioned them on the Killswitch Engage episode, because Scion is Howard Jones and Jared Dines.
Yes, aware of him.
So they did a song called The Blade, and that's a ripper. Like that is very much a balls out metalcore track. So I really liked The Blade, and I just completely missed the fact that they did an album as well.
Okay, I've never heard it actually. I'll need to hunt it out.
So hang on, let me bloody bring it up. Scion by Scion. It came out at the end of 2021. Yeah, it came out then. It did come out late 2021. 12 songs, 44 minutes. Scion, good, just good. Actually, a good example of some balls out metalcore. It'll sort of get your blood pumping a little bit if you're into that sort of stuff. I don't want to just always put Howard Jones and Killswitch Engage in the same boat, but for fans of Killswitch Engage, definitely check out Scion. It's got way more genty vibes. With Jared on there, but quite enjoyed that. Also an album with a random acoustic song on it, but kind of fit the vibe a bit more, to be fair. So that's what I've been listening to, or that's what I'm going to bring to what I've been listening to, is Scion by Scion and Mid-Flight Brawl.
Good. I obviously Poison the Well. When I listen to one album, I always want to listen to more, so I've been going through the discography. There was a band I really like everything they do called Citizen. they released a new song called Bash Out. So been giving that a listen, and I think I ended up putting on Citizen Radio on Spotify and getting some older sort of emo grunge stuff that I used to listen to sort of in the mid 2010s. So there's a band called Super Heaven, Australian band that I've seen perform a few times live. I think I've even supported them in, and given their album Jar a listen. Great if anyone wants to listen to something that's just got some really like grunge vibes, but with a modern sort of rock and sort of punk sad. It's called, you could call it sad boy emo or what do you want to call it. Then you told me last week about this lo-fi Japan playlist.
Yeah.
So turns out I listened to the wrong one, but it did put me onto something. So I've been back at college this week, and I listened to the soundtrack from Ghost of Tsushima.
Right.
Which, for anyone who wants a soundtrack to listen to, fucking magnificent. It is so good. It is so good. And that just took me down a route of more soundtracks. So I listened to the Tenet soundtrack by Ludwig Göransson, and have I butchered?
I put in work at Ludwig. Tell me that line.
Have I Göransson, Ludwig Göransson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, give that a listen. Another wonderful soundtrack to behold. And I also, for the first time, really listened to a band that I'd not listened to since maybe 2014, a sludgy, heavy band called Kowloon Walled City.
Okay.
Highly recommended for fans of, ISIS, Cursed,
Right.
all that sort of. Yeah, give them a listen. They had an album that came out tail end of 2021. I hadn't really given any time to. Again, magnificent band. Give that a shot if you want something a bit doomy.
C'est magnifique.
Yeah, maybe not for the gym. It's a little bit slow, but I don't know. Might be into it.
I was just actually one thing I've sort of ignored recently is I've just not liked enough songs. If I hear a song, I used to like it, and then it goes into your liked songs playlist. And it always gave me a chance to go back and listen to those songs and remember to explore those people a bit more. And I've just ignored that. Like I haven't done much of that recently. Ironically, though, the Scion the Blade is on there from May 1st, 2021. But coming off of Scion, what I did hear was Silosis, After Lifeless Years.
Oh wow, there's a band I've not heard a name of for a long time.
On the album Conclusion of an Age. So I've known Silosis for everyone knows of Silosis, I'm sure, but it wasn't a band I've particularly listened to. But for whatever reason, that After Lifeless Years was an absolute ripper. So I might go check out them next week. Get a bit more Silosis in my face.
Well, actually, what are you going to be asking me to listen to next week, Keith?
Oh yeah, I'm just gonna let's not even dick around with this. Let's pull the plaster off and get the vomit bucket ready, because let's do Roadrunner United. We've talked about it enough.
Bro, it's been up in conversation since the formation of the podcast. This one's been on your bucket list.
Yep.
For the right or the wrong reason, we'll find out this week.
Yep, it's I've kind of been building to it. I sort of knew weeks ago that I was going to do, I was like 2005 on our spreadsheet quite clearly is this era for me. So, you've got Trivium, you had Bullet, and I was like, yeah, let's put in Roadrunner United and see what we can come up with. Again, maybe even similar to Bullet. I don't really think I'm looking forward to this.
I'm thinking of to my memory the names of the people involved, because you've got Mark Hunter from Chimera, you've got your Matt Heafy from Trivium.
Oh, there's so many people. I mean, Joey Jordison. Like, I don't know if you remember, they did the team captains.
Oh fucking hell, Christ!
They
this is going to be a throwback and a half.
Yeah, it's going to be Mingen. I think it's going to be really Mingen.
Mingen is going to be brought up. That's going to be my word I'm gonna have a minging count when we talk about this next week. Yeah, sure.
Although coincidentally, talking about the Blade, talking about Scion, talking about Howard Jones, I remember the first song off of the All-Star Session. I'm looking at it now. The All-Star Sessions. It's called Rotary United. I wonder if that was the UK name for it. The Dagger opens with Howard Jones, and does it? Hang on.
No, it is. It's lyrics. According to the wiki, it's quite a lot.
Yeah. It does absolutely just has that pick slide in Howard screaming, and I remember the Dagger being a bloody good song. But let's.
Oh yeah,
oh my god, it's an hour and 17 minutes.
Oh, why you do this to me, Keith?
I
give you 30-minute bangers, and then you hand me this dog shit. Great.
I know, you could literally listen to Tear from the Red like 2.5 times and what it's going to take us to get through this.
So next week I'm going to talk about Tear from the Red again.
This is going to suck.
Well, thank you very much everyone for listening. We have been Alive or Just Blethering. Do check us out on our socials at AOGB Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or email us aogb.podcast@gmail.com and give us a shout. It'd be great to hear from you. Next week on Alive Just Blethering, if you want to join us, we're going to be talking about Rodona United.
The All-Star Sessions.
Oh, here comes the pain.
Good night.
Good night.